I mean, this is a conversation I've been seeing so much on social media. Mm-hmm. People are asking the question, like, am I affected by who I sleep with? People are starting to say things. I saw one status like, a woman was like, you know that DNA can stay in you from your baby daddy? Women was on there like, for real? Mm. But there's a book everyone should read called Genetic Kiss. Mm-hmm. Everyone should read that book. It was the first actual fact I read all those years ago, and it blew my mind. Bubba broke it all the way down. What really happens when you're having intercourse, or it's down to sharing a kiss with someone. Yeah. What happens?
Genetic kiss, right?
Genetic kiss. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I think it's something everyone should know in this day and age, in the age of situationships or whatever's going on out there.
Stuff is wild out there.
Stuff is wild.
Yeah, just be happening. I stay in my room in my books. I'm reading, studying.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, there's no such thing as casual sex, because I see people talking about you can do it, no strings attached. Something's going to attach itself to you.
Yeah, it's going to stay there for a moment too.
It's going to stay there for a moment.
Yeah.
So obviously, I'm going to speak from the female perspective, because that's what I am. I mean, that's the only perspective I can speak from.
I'll let you do that. You go right ahead.
Yeah, it's broken down to us that the male DNA can stay in there up to between 7 to 9 years, up to that amount. So once you become aware of that, it kind of makes you, maybe I should be a little more careful who I let in there.
A little bit more considerate.
A little bit considerate for a little while.
Yeah.
But, I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw this comedy clip. It was Tiffany Haddish, I think. Mm-hmm. She was talking about how she was raised by her grandmother. And her grandmother taught her certain things, like her grandmother said to her, a woman's body is like a house. You can't be letting a bunch of different men in the house, so people think it's a crack house. Keep the grass trimmed, keep the house clean, all that. And I was cracking up, but I was like, it's actually a good analogy if we took the woman's body as a house. And maybe, she meets a guy, Jerome.
You just pulled that name out of thin air. Jerome, yeah? Okay.
It's always Jerome. Yeah. And she's like, you know what? I like Jerome. I'm going to give him the keys to my house. And then I'm going to let him in. And, Jerome puts that key in and locks it.
He locks the door, yeah?
And Jerome moves into the house and he brings his stuff. His bags.
His bags and stuff, yeah.
His bags.
And his jacket, maybe.
Yeah.
His clothes.
A bunch of stuff.
Toothbrush, maybe.
Yeah.
It's just all this stuff.
All of it.
Yeah.
Just leaves it in the house.
It's all in there.
And some months later, she realizes Jerome ain't ish, okay?
Yeah, Jerome ain't the one.
He ain't the one.
Yeah.
She's like, get out of my house, Jerome.
Oh, that's harsh. Well, okay.
You're never having access to the house.
Jerome must have done something, but okay.
Jerome did something really bad.
Okay.
Jerome messed up.
So Jerome had to go.
Jerome had to go. But he left his bags, his baggage behind.
Yeah, he left his bags in the hallway.
In the house. So, she takes a little bit of time to herself, but a few months later, she meets Derek.
These names coming from... Okay. Derek, yeah.
That's a typical second guy. Derek, Derek's saying all the right things. Derek seems like a great guy, so she's like, you know what? Derek can have the keys to my house. But Derek opens the door to the house, and what does he see there? He sees Jerome's bags.
Bags in the passageway, yeah.
He sees it, and he's not happy. He's like, whose bags are these?
That's understandable.
What's wrong with this? And he's, he wants the bags out.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much how it works. Bubba wrote down that male DNA will battle for dominance within a woman's body. We know how males are. They want to be the top one in your life.
The king, yeah.
The king.
Is that what? Okay. If you say so.
Yeah. So Derek's trying to kick Jerome's bags out and move his bags in. And it gets a bit crazy.
Yeah, it gets a bit crazy. Because all of that's happening in her house,
internally in her house. So You're bringing too many Dereks and Jeromes up in there. You can get overwritten. No, literally. You can get overwritten.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, I know I've witnessed it. You come across the type of woman where we say it's just a few too many Y chromosomes, as we like to say. She doesn't know who she is anymore. Mm-hmm. You can literally overwrite yourself taking on too many partners because the DNA does stay there. So I think it's important information to know. I'm not really, because it's a touchy debate on that stuff.
Right.
And, you know, you could do what you want, but it's important to have the information.
Right.
Our thing is make informed decisions, just deal in the facts.
Exactly that.
So I'm not really down with the shaming. I see a lot of that going on. This information is not to shame people. Everyone should know this information, and in turn we can do better and teach. I think, to me, teach younger women, you know, the effects of it. Because to me, that's true sexual liberation, knowing the science behind sex and the effects of it and making informed decisions. Not per se sleeping with whoever you want. That doesn't...
Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the
to me,
day...
that's not true liberation.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you can do it, but to then do that and not know what's going on in you internally, that's information. That's a problem.
Exactly. It's all about information. Ultimately, your decisions are your decisions, but the way we always approach it is, like you say, informed decisions. Make sure people know the science of exactly what's going on. And yeah, the analogy is a good analogy. It's a good analogy, and it's very pertinent. And I think also, Joel, just to have the information of the science of genetics anyway, because when you go back to the Genetic Kiss book as well, even just from the perspective of getting in your first relationship, it's to have an idea of exactly what's taking place when these things happen, when a genetic kiss takes place, when you exchange saliva, when you then go on to have sexual intercourse. To be informed in what exactly is taking place within your body or scientifically in the mixture of genes. Because even speaking about what we were speaking about earlier, as far as genetic memory, genetic trauma, the exchange of genes is something that can affect what's going on in your system and therefore your mind and what you're triggering. Just to make that
That's
point.
So true, because you can inherit someone's trauma.
Exactly.
That's the way Barbara broke it down, where composition of 4 generations going
there
back.
You go.
Or 30 ancestors.
There you go.
You have intercourse with someone, you take on those ancestors. So, you know, for better or for worse, or for their trauma or not. So, in that sense, you know, culturally, we used to have certain sciences where you would know people's family history and know your compatibility with them. Exactly. It's all a bit blurry these days.
Yeah, it's a little bit blurry, but the science remains. It's not that the science is clear. What's taking place is clear. So therefore, you would have, back in ancient times, we would always understand the science. You would know both the science and the art of sex, and it would be a case. Okay, we know exactly what's taking place, because, like you say, it's not even just from a situation in terms of the analogy you've brought up where you may have an overload. It's just even just from that first situation, if you know and understand, because the example Baba gives is that you see that friend and that friend's in love, and it's like that friend ain't trying to hear anything but Jerome or Derek's name, whichever one it is. That's all that friend can talk about. Oh yeah, you know, or even vice versa. That's all that friend can talk about is that person that they're in love with. And what Baba Yanan explained is that what you think is love is the fact that your genes have been overpowered by the person you've mixed with, by the person you've exchanged genetics with, by the person you've kissed, or so on and so forth, if that makes sense. So it's important to be aware of that before you go in, because that awareness helps protect you. Oh, I know this has the potential to affect me in this way, so I'm ready for it, if that makes sense. And therefore, you know, you're a little bit wiser.
Maybe I'll get to know that person before I exchange genes.
Before I exchange, maybe I'll make sure that person is, you know, to the best of my ability, make sure that person is right for me before we engage in that activity, because it has an effect. It has an effect just from that simple one-on-one view, perspective, you know. Yeah, so yeah, you know, exactly. You could think you're in love. But and that's what he said. There's a diagram actually in the book where he has the 5 physical senses on one side, and then he has what you would term as the 2 mental senses, so to speak, thinking and reasoning. And what he explains is that the moment you exchange genetics, what's taken place, which has started on the physical, you've seen someone, you like what you see. You get to talking, he drops some nice lines, you like what you hear. Eventually you get to exchange genetics, right? As the moment that happens, that what's taking place travels from the physical into the mental. Now your reasoning and thinking is subject to the exchange of genetics. So you can potentially lose reason. That's why I lose your thought ability. That's why sometimes you might see a friend and they're in a relationship, and from your perspective, you're like, this relationship is terrible. It's awful. It's bad for them. It's toxic, whatever the word is. And you're like, yo, I don't think this is good for you. But they ain't trying to hear all that. They ain't trying to, because they've lost their own ability to reason, because all they can think is that person, because that person is literally inside them, if that makes sense. So the science of what's taking place, yeah, that's an important science. That's
some time away, and you're like, I don't know what I ever saw in them.
Yeah.
Rather break it down.
Yeah. They were in your system. That's what you saw in them. They were all up in there. So,
but yeah, it's such an important conversation though when it comes to mental health, because you can't talk about mental health without talking about who you sleep with, sexual health. It all ties in.
It all ties in. All of it ties in. Physical, mental, sexual health, spiritual health. It all ties in and interlinks. And we're seeing a lot of talk, rightly so, about mental health recently, but spiritual health is just as important. And that's what Baba Yanun teaches on in books like Genetic Kiss, in books like 30 Spirits. Important books to understand what we're spiritually comprised of and how we take care of our spiritual bodies, if that makes sense. And it's always important to differentiate between, hopefully we can get onto that, between the physical body, between the spirit, and between the soul. These are different entities. Yeah. And soul and spirit are often, confused, if that makes sense. But they're different entities serving different purposes, if that makes sense. And not everyone has a soul, which we can observe. You look around the world, you'd be like, damn, that's some soulless behavior. Not everyone has a soul. Everyone on this physical realm has a spirit, because spirit is the animator, but not everyone has a soul. So that's important as well, just in the context of understanding the science. But yeah, it's important. It's important. It's very important.
It's so important. It's so important. In case in point, be careful who you let leave bags in your house.
Yeah. Be careful, man. Be careful. But it applies all the way around. And really this speaks to how we will move and behave as a tribe. So, speaking from a woman's perspective, from your seat is correct. And then obviously men speak from a man's perspective. But all of this science moves to push us towards better behavior as a tribe. So we all understand the science, and we all know how to maneuver and how to protect ourselves and how to protect our children and so on and so forth. Yeah. So
because everyone's acting wild out here. Yeah. It's not a gender thing.
Yeah.
It's
a bit much.
We all need to behave better.
Yeah. It's a bit much. It's a bit much. So that's why, when you from that perspective, we talk about adhering to our culture. It's moving towards the way we were originally behaving, which has been corrupted by the day and age we're living in, by other than our own. So we're behaving as other than ourselves. Traditionally, if we go back all those years ago, many years ago, admittedly, we wouldn't be behaving this way, would we? So this is a modern thing, but it's important. I just think it's important, like you say, to understand the science. Then when you're doing things, it's not an ignorant thing. It's not a matter of ignorance, because
when you know better, you do better.
Yeah, not always, but at least let's make everyone know better, so that when they don't do better, it's like, well, you knew. So yeah, very important. I agree.